We still have a couple of people I know that are going to drop in. I just want to welcome everybody. We have three visitors. Barry Sanders in the back. In case y'all are not on Facebook, Barry's all over the place. And we have James Parker.
John, that's James.
John. That's it.
I've been called worse.
I'll get y'all separated in a minute. He's Jim's brother. And then we have a friend of mine, Chris Chandler. And so I was hoping 2 or 3 more people would get here. Oh, and Woody. Sorry, Woody. You were behind Stephanie there. Your hat's covering your face. So we're not going to ask y'all to do anything in particular, but I do want to ask you how long you've lived in Grand Prairie, and I'll just start with Chris.
44 years.
On and off. My parents been here since
Yeah.
77.
Yeah.
I've actually been moved away for a good 5 or 6 years, but before that I lived here my whole life.
Yeah. How long was that? You want to tell us?
Yeah, I can tell
Well, you don't have to.
51 years.
Okay, okay. Oh, and I forgot Steve, but he's not a visitor. We'll get to him in a minute. Woody, how long have you lived in Grand Prairie?
Since 1956.
56, okay. Almost as long as me. Barry, how about you?
I first came to Grand Prairie in 1969. I didn't come alone. My parents brought me. I was 3.
Oh, he just told us how old he was, didn't he?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
When you figure out that I'm younger than I look, that's the fun part. It's like, wow, he's got a lot of highway miles on it. But I was a scout here, went to Grand Prairie schools, went to first job at Six Flags over there, just local boy. Moved away in 1998 to Arlington. Then down to Houston, back in 2014.
Well,
We're here.
everybody that lives in Grand Prairie for at least one day has some history in Grand Prairie.
Yeah.
So, history happens every day. So you can become a member and you can be sharing more of your history with us.
Yeah.
And we have a brand new member, Steve Hamburger, and some of you were here when Steve came in. His father was a coach at Grand Prairie High School, but he happened to have been my Texas history teacher my first year at Grand Prairie High School. John, did you say you had Coach Hamburger? No, okay.
It was me that had.
That's what I did.
You did, okay. I didn't remember if John did or not. But Steve, you grew up in Irving, is that right?
We moved here with my dad taking the job at Grand Prairie High in 1956, and I've been gone for 61 years. We moved in 64, but I went through elementary school, I went through Uptown Theater, I went through the roller rink, and went through...
Hey, you're stealing some of my thunder.
Cub Scouts. And it was even in the Johnny Crawford parade, so...
Oh, my goodness.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, we
yeah.
got to talk to you a little more then
I'll
later
do
on.
some autographs
Steve
later.
just joined this week, so we're happy to have a new member. Michael's not quite a new member. He's been a member close to a year. Michael, how long have you lived in Grand Prairie?
Well, I've lived here straight about 10 years now.
Okay.
But I've been on and off about 23 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I've had a history. My parents moved here when I was in college. So I was attending college down in Keene, Texas. So I was up home here. So I had a home here in Grand Prairie. And my brother grew up here. My family, my parents lived here, and they worked and retired at Methodist Mansfield, Stanton Street.
Okay.
Yeah, and then when I traveled over the country, and when I met my wife in New Jersey, I decided to bring her back down here to Texas.
Smart move, smart move. And Charlene will be in shortly. I see someone else coming. Charlene is a fairly new member. I think this is her 4th year. And so we'll find out a little bit more about her later.
What about Mike back there?
And Mike's not a new member, but he's kind of new. Mike's on our board. In case you can't tell, he has his own little setup back there because we're going to film. And he's our technology person on the board. And so he's trying to help all of us learn how to do certain things, and some of us are just getting older, and it's tough. So anyway, but you'll meet everybody on the panel when we get started. The Wagoner's sitting back here. Juanita is our vice president and membership chair, and her husband Walter. tags along with her very nicely.
Good man.
They're attached at the hip, I think. But anyway, and then of course Stephanie is our, oh, here we go. Stephanie is going to be moderating. I'll introduce her later and tell you a little bit. You go sit by,
Dan's gonna
go sit by
Barry.
Barry.
He's gonna come heckle.
I have to have somebody to laugh at.
I think if I could catch Charlene and she could come in and sit down. And Sarah, yeah. I will just mention, because I did catch a couple of you, and I know Charlene did, we have a guest register out there, either on paper or on the computer. And the computer's very easy. It's a touch screen. You can use the mouse if you want to. It's just a few things to type in or check. So please do that before you leave. That information goes to the city. And some of you may not realize that we are sitting on historic parkland, and this is a historic building. We have on the outside of the building, just to, as you come in to the left of the door, a landmark medallion, number 32, I believe it is. We just got it up there not long ago. But we were able to save this building. We got wind that it might get torn down. And Stephanie and I put our heads together and we decided that this building had a lot of historic value in 3 different areas. First of all, where it was located, when it was located, and who it was built by, and the purpose of it. So the city council agreed, nearly 100%. And so they restored it. Outside, it looked pretty bad. Once we get some renovating finished up here and some of the pictures get hung back up, you'll see what the original building looked like, and then you'll see 2 or 3 pictures through the years that were not impressive at all. And so we like it a lot now. And anyhow, so I'll just go ahead and remind a couple of folks who just walked in to mute your cell phone, but check in with us on Facebook so people know you're here. I would say that, would this be a wild guess in saying that 85% of the people in Grand Prairie don't know we have a museum?
That's right.
And it's not their fault. We certainly try to get the word out. But, you know, there's not a newspaper. That hurts. A lot of people don't use Facebook, so, you know, that's just a problem. So share our posts. If you're on Facebook, be sure you share our posts so that your friends see them. And comment on our posts. That's even more important, because when you do that, your friends also see that. And that helps stimulate the activity of our Facebook page. And then we can get out to the public a little better. So today is kind of this is a part of our birthday celebration. This year we will be 50 years old. Ruthie Jackson started the Grand Prairie Historical Organization. It was actually 501c3'd. I don't think you could make that a verb. But in 1975. And it had existed previously with the Genealogical Society. They were a combo group, but then several people wanted to separate it. And that's okay with us, and some of us are still in the genealogy group. But by the way, we are being videotaped today because we want our panel for historical purposes especially, and all their information. The birthday committee, when I became president last year, I asked certain people to help do some fun things, different things, not just meetings. And so we planned some Saturday events. This is one of them. We've had a few already. We have more coming up. I won't tell you all of them, but in May, on this first Saturday, we're going to have a Grand Prairie trivia game. And these are questions. Stephanie's played this before with our historical members. And so it's fun because, you know, what you think you knew might not be true. So we need to dispel a lot of rumors. And I have something to say about that when it comes to my time in the program. But I just want to tell you who's on the committee. And that is, excuse me, Stephanie. Jan Barrett, who is our chair, cannot be here today. She was going to be on the panel. but there was a funeral that she needed to go to today. I'm taking her place. And so Martha Pengelly in the purple is also on the birthday committee, and Georgia Clemson. And so we meet every month or 6 weeks, and we met 2 times and really hashed out a lot of stuff in the beginning that we wanted to get done. And so we've begun implementing all those fun celebrations. So this is just one little part of the 50th birthday activity that we're doing. Also on the last Saturday of June, which is the 28th, we're not sure about this. We're going to do something that day. But we were going to go down to the Liberty Bell down near City Hall. The replica is down there, and there's a wonderful story that goes with it. And so Georgia was going to tell us the story, but the city is now moving the Liberty Bell to a new location. It may go into storage somewhere until they get through with construction that's going to start. We'd like it to come here. If y'all have any pull with any of your city council people, tell them, move that Liberty Bell down here to the museum and leave it. So, I don't know if we have any pull or not, but it won't hurt to try. Anyway, our panel today is Bob Johnson. Bob, give him a little wave. And Jim Parker, and Martha Pengelly, and me. I'll wait from here for the moment. So I hope that we're going to do this another time with different people, if at all possible, because some just could not make it today. And we do have several people we really, really need to get their Grand Prairie history stories on video. So if you met the new members when we were talking and you just feel like you cannot leave the building without filling out a membership application, Juanita has them. They're right over here where the name tags are. And I think that's about all. Oh, and I will tell you this, if you become a member, you won't miss out on any of the things that are planned, that are coming up, because Juanita will send you an email to remind you about what's coming up. And I'm going to turn it over to Stephanie Marino. Stephanie is our secretary this year for GPHO, and so she's helping do a lot of the birthday stuff for us. I'm just going to take a seat up there.
Hi, everyone. Pretty much all of you got to tell your story about coming to Grand Prairie, but I'll kind of fill mine in. I was born in Dallas, and my parents moved here when I was 4 in 1970, so Barry, you beat me by a year. And I'm kind of like a bad penny. I just keep turning back up. I graduated from Grand Prairie High and married someone in the Marine Corps, and we went to California, and then I came back to Grand Prairie. I moved to Japan, I came back to Grand Prairie. I moved to Oregon, I came back to Grand Prairie. Got a divorce, and then eventually I moved to Tennessee for 11 years, and I came back in 2010, and I don't plan on leaving. I'm back home and love Grand Prairie. I love growing up here. So much so that when I was in my 20s, I joined the Grand Prairie Historic Organization, and some of the members kind of teased me. They're like, "You're 20 years old, what are you doing, hanging out with us old folks?" And I said, well, I'm just proud to grow up here in Grand Prairie, and I want to know more. And eventually I joined the board, and I've been on and off the board for about 15 years. So, yes, sir.
You were kind of like a homing pigeon, wasn't you?
I am a homing pigeon. Yep, they send me out and I come on back. I'm a retired homing pigeon then. So today, a purpose of today is to kind of get on tape some of the stories of people who either grew up here, worked here, retired here, and just have it for posterity. So we already know their names, but if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself one by one and tell who you are.
All right, I'm Bob Johnson, and I was born here. I wasn't born in Grand Prairie, I was born on Kirby Creek, south of town.
Well, we're going to talk about where people were born in just a second, but if you want to just go ahead and introduce.
And I moved here actually in 1940, but we always considered Grand Prairie our home. Right. Even though we lived outside the city limits, we always come to Grand Prairie to shop.
Right.
I'd go to the movies occasionally if I had a quarter. I moved here permanently in 1954.
Okay.
And I worked for the fire department for 31 years. I worked for the post office 3 years.
Mhm.
And I was so smart, I quit a $300 a month job to go to a $250 job.
Some of us have made that.
But I had some
judgment
feeling
before.
over it.
Yeah. All right, well, Jim?
Jim Parker, and I was born in well, let's see, I was not born in Grand Prairie, but my family first moved to Grand Prairie in about 1925. And weren't you born in Grand Prairie?
I was born at home.
In Grand Prairie? But in Grand
I
Prairie.
was born in my
You're
house.
still in my
on
thunder
Prairie.
here.
Yeah. Well, he said he come here in 1940, then, anyway. So, my family moved here in 1925, and so I've always heard about Grand Prairie, and I've lived in Grand Prairie most of my life.
Okay, awesome. Martha?
Well, I'm Martha Pengelly. Martha Bowerman was my maiden name, and I married Jimmy Pengelly in 1961. But my family moved here from Birmingham, Alabama in June of 1953. I was 10 years old, and my uncle, Hewley Bowerman, had the Oil Shapes Rubber Company right over there on Jefferson, and my dad had gotten laid off, and my uncle offered my dad a job, so that's how we ended up from Alabama to Texas, and I've been here ever since, and you probably don't want me to tell anything else right now.
Right, I'm kind of, y'all are all still in my thunder here. All right, Bonnie?
I'm Bonnie Stever Cochran.
Okay, thank you. So what we're going to do is I do have a list of questions. They're all very simple questions, and we just want to hear what your thoughts are and answers. And if something strikes with you, if you want to ask questions, we're kind of casual today, don't have a big group, so we're just going to talk amongst ourselves, right?
Sure.
So some of you have already answered the question, but tell us when, and what year, and where you were born.
Yes, I was born about 3 miles south of Grand Prairie. My parents moved here earlier in the 20s, and I was the last boy born at home.
Oh,
There was 6 in our family, 5 boys and 1 girl,
okay.
and I was the 4th child born. And we always used Grand Prairie for our base, you know, for buying groceries and going to the movie or going to church mostly.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've been here a long time.
Okay, wow, you have been a long time.
I was born in 1957 at St. Paul Hospital in Dallas, which I guess is not there anymore. And my parents, my mom was from Grand Prairie. Like I say, her mother moved here in about 1925. And so I heard about Grand Prairie all my life. And they moved away. My mom got married and stayed away till I was like out of elementary school. Then we moved back.
Okay, Martha, when and where were you born?
I was born in Birmingham, Alabama, November the 18th, 1942.
All right, Bonnie? You don't have to say the year if you don't want to.
That's
A
okay.
lot of people already know.
We have a thing about being elderly, yeah.
Stephanie just happens to be a
Running
little
joke.
younger than me.
DJ.
Yeah, I was born June 11th, 1946.
Mhm.
I was born at Methodist Hospital in Dallas, but almost was born on Jefferson Street in Prairie. But Daddy managed to get a flat tire fixed in time to get Mother to the hospital.
Oh, my.
So, yeah.
Methodist. So no one was, well, Bob was born just outside the city limits, but so everyone was born somewhere else. Okay, good deal. Well, I'm also a Methodist, and Sarah will attest to this. When we lived in Tennessee, every time we came home, and as soon as we could see that blue cross on top, I would say, girls, girls, look. Yes, Mom, that's where you were born.
Yes.
Actually, we had and when we moved out there to that farm, we had a Route 4 Arlington address.
A Route 4.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, didn't even have a Grand Prairie address.
Yeah. Well, that seems to, it's a running joke with Dan and I, the Grand Prairie just keeps getting annexed further and further and further south, and yeah, so it's now been annexed into Grand Prairie, no longer Arlington. So what were the names of your parents and the names of your siblings?
My dad was named Ward Calvin Johnson, and my mother's name was Elsie Marilla Johnson, and they met in Josephine, Texas.
Ah,
And my dad, the way the story goes, that he got mad at a teacher, and he was in about sixth or seventh grade or something. And he just jumped the train and went to Josephine where he had some cousins.
Ah, okay.
And he stayed there in Josephine that's where he met my mother.
Okay.
And when he married my mother, they said you could have heard her mother scream clear to Oklahoma.
Did they elope?
Yeah, I guess.
Oh, my. Okay. Jim? Oh, and I'm sorry, and how many, I know you said earlier how many siblings, but what were the name of your siblings?
I had 5 children, and Brent was my oldest.
No, your brothers and sisters.
Oh, brothers
Yeah,
and sisters.
Yeah.
Okay, Emery was my oldest brother, and he was the tallest of the family. He was 6'2", had a nice head of hair, which none of the rest of us had. And Ward was the second boy, and he lived here in Grand Prairie all his life. And then there was Roland, which was 9 years older than me. And they had 3 boys, and mother wanted a girl. They always wanted a girl, right? So anyway, I was supposed to have been a girl. I missed out somehow. And the next one was missed out, Bert. That's his picture back there in the United States Marine thing.
Yeah.
You know, and then his mother was Marlene.
Finally got their girl.
Yeah, finally got a girl. And you didn't touch her either.
Oh, with 5 older brothers, I'm sure not. All right, Jim.
I'll also piggyback on him. This is his mom and dad and 3 of their kids when they first moved to Grand Prairie. That was
The 3
about
eldest.
when they first moved to Grand Prairie.
Aw.
And I'll put these on the table where people look at them later. So, my mother was Marlene. She was the youngest of his siblings.
Your Uncle Bob here.
My Uncle Bob. My dad was, he was from Bonham, and his family goes back generations there. So they met through Calvary Baptist Church.
Oh.
And I had 3 brothers. My mother always wanted a girl. She never got one.
Aw. All right, Martha.
Well, my mother's name was Alma Virgie Bowerman, and my dad was George Henry Bowerman. And they got married on Christmas Day, 1940, I believe it was. And I'm the oldest of 3 girls, and so my 2 sisters, one is named Linda Bowerman Myers now, and Carolyn Jean Bowerman Lennis. Both of them are retired school teachers, but we lost my youngest sister, Carolyn, to diabetes in 2006. So
I'm sorry to hear that. Bonnie?
Well, my father was Herman Stever Jr., and my mother was Lavella Staten, and they met in Sherman, Texas. Daddy was from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, but stationed at Perrin Field. And so my mother was from Bonham, grew up there, and just so happened that her first cousin married Bob Johnston's brother.
I was going to say, there's a Bonham connection here.
Mhm. So we're related, distant relatives, and of course Jim. I claim them both.
And then we are too.
And we are too. It's interesting when you start doing genealogy. Anyway, so there's a whole lot of history, you know, with moving and doing things, but my 2 sisters are, I'm the oldest of 3 also, and 3 girls, but my middle sister, Marcia, and my youngest sister, Brenda. Of course, we all grew up here, and my sister, Marcia, still lives in Grand Prairie. Brenda is in Arlington now.
Okay. Well, Bob, you said that you were born at home in what is now considered Grand Prairie, so we'll claim that. But Jim, how old were you when you moved to Grand Prairie? Or did you ever, I know you live in Arlington now, so did you move here to Grand Prairie?
Well, I did live in Grand Prairie most of my life. Like I say, my mother was from here, so my grandparents still lived here, aunts and uncles, cousins. It was always over at Bob and Pat's house. So Grand Prairie was, even though my parents moved to Dallas, and I went to, from the time I was born to elementary school in Dallas, and then my parents, I guess, had enough of Dallas and moved back to Grand Prairie.
Back to Grand Prairie.
So I went in Grand Prairie, I went to Jefferson, and then Grand Prairie High School.
Awesome. Okay, and Martha, how about you? When did you move here?
I moved here in 1953. I was 10 years old.
10 years old. Okay, and Bonnie?
I've been here, other than moving to Pennsylvania a couple of times.
Mhm.
Mother wasn't too fond of the north, the winters. So, yeah, they tried it, didn't work. Daddy became a Texan whether he wanted to or not.
Exactly. Okay, so Mr. Johnson, tell us where you went to school.
Actually, I went to Grand Prairie High School all my life. I was supposed to go to Florence Hill School.
Mhm.
But my older brother, like I say, he's 9 years older, and he was already in high school, so they let me go to Grand Prairie High School instead of attending Florence Hill. My brothers attended Florence Hill, or most, well, I know two of them did, because my other brother Roland, he used to tell me all the stories about how Florence Hill worked, and it wasn't very good sometimes. But anyway, so I got to go to Grand Prairie High School, and I attended high school all my life and graduated in 1947.
Not too far. Okay, so you didn't go to elementary or middle
Oh,
school?
yeah, yeah.
Oh, where did you go to elementary?
Well, during, the war started, and they moved 2 classes down to a little school down on southeast 3rd.
Okay.
They called it South Side,
Mhm.
and there was 4 rooms there, and I'm not positive, but I think it's either 5th and 6th or 6th and 7th, I can't remember exactly.
Okay.
But we attended school there for 2 years.
Okay.
Because of the war, we had so many people moving here and so many kids joined school, they didn't have room at Grand Prairie High.
Right.
And so I spent 2 years down there at South Side.
Okay. Yeah, it's near Grand Prairie Road too, correct? Yeah.
Mrs. Lee.
Okay, that's what I thought. I thought it was real close to Lee, because I thought it was odd when I first discovered where it was. It's close to where Crockett Elementary was, so, or, yeah, it was. So, all right, where did you go to school?
Well, like I say, elementary school, I went to school in Dallas. And then when I started at junior high at Jefferson, we moved back to Grand Prairie.
Mm-hmm.
So I went 3 years at Jefferson and then 3 years at Grand Prairie High School.
Okay, what year did you graduate?
75.
75. What year did you graduate, Bob?
47.
47 and 75. Okay, Martha.
Okay, I think we moved here in '53, and we lived just right across the Jefferson on Southwest 6th Street. So I went to James Bowie Elementary School, and we walked to school every morning and home every evening. And then went to Lee Junior High for junior high, and then Grand Prairie High School. I graduated in 1961.
Okay. Bonnie?
I went to Crockett, Austin, and Houston elementaries. Part of it was a move across town from Avion Village to Carrier Parkway, but then the school district changed the boundary line, so I ended up finishing elementary at Houston, which is just right over here. So this neck of the woods had a lot of my friends living here growing up. Went to Lee Junior High and Grand Prairie High School. I graduated in 1964.
Oh, there you go. Well, Martha and I have the same story. I went to Bowie, Lee, and Grand Prairie High.
Well, yeah,
how
great.
cool is that?
Great.
So in school, did you participate in any sports or participate in any clubs?
Well, in early days of my little junior years, we had to recess at about 10 o'clock. And we'd get out and play ball or whatever, fight or whatever. And then we had another break in the afternoon. I don't know whether they still do that or not, but, and then we had but I didn't get to participate in sports because I was due at the farm for the hoe or something. Round up the horses or whatever.
Right.
But anyway, I had to ride the bus.
Okay.
And if I didn't ride the bus, I had to walk home, which I did a few times. But I didn't like that 3-mile trip out there. So anyway, I tried to always catch the bus.
There you go. All right. So Jim,
What was the question?
were you in any sports or clubs during school?
I was not athletic, I didn't care about sports, and I was in no sports. And I wasn't really in any clubs. I just went to school and did what I was supposed to do and went home and did what I was told at home.
There you go. All right, Martha.
Okay, well, when I was in grade school, I don't remember being in any of those, but then in Lee Junior High, I joined the band, and I played the alto saxophone, and we played at little ball games then, was just out on the playground in the afternoons. Then when I went to high school, I continued, and I was in the A band up there, and we I was in the marching band. We played and marched at all the football games on Friday night in the freezing weather, and let's see, I just mainly played volleyball. I played on the volleyball team, and then played on a girls softball team for a while.
Okay.
Just sports and PE, that's all, and recess. Recess, they used to call it. There weren't so many clubs and organizations when I was at Lee, but it was in choir, always in choir. And so, in fact, our choir teacher, Mr. Anthony, has been up here. And so he's still going strong. It's amazing. Music is good for you, let me tell you that. But in high school, I was in choir, I was an attendance clerk, I was in the future secretaries, future homemakers. I loved typing in shorthand. I did UIL competitions. I liked doing that kind of stuff. And I was, an officer during those times, so I just stayed busy.
All right. So when you guys were in school, did y'all have, other than rounding up horses, did you have a job outside of school and outside of home?
No.
Just rounding up the horses.
It had to be on the bus. You might
Okay.
get a whooping if you missed it.
There you go. Well, I know what your teenage job was, so you want to talk about that?
Well, first of all, my mother kept us involved in church. So Calvary Baptist Church, we were always there and that started when we moved back. So we were always there involved in church. So we were involved in school and church. Then then I got a paper out. I threw the Grand Prairie Daily News for quite a while. And then it's a long, funny story, but Elmer Davison fired me because
Okay, come on, you gotta elaborate on that.
Well, Grand Prairie, especially back then, was a very good old boy town. So there was this one guy that I threw this paper, and he never liked me. He found something wrong with everything I did. Well, he knew Elmer Davison, who was the publisher, and he was like the owner of the paper, even though he's just the publisher. So he told Elmer that I was no good and didn't throw his paper right, and Elmer fired me. He didn't ask for my side of the story, nothing. He just fired me. So anyway, so then I needed a job bad, and I was looking into Grand Prairie Daily News, and I saw Don Juan's hiring for after school. So I had never heard of Don Juan's.
Right.
So I went up there, and it was just some funky looking place. What is this? But anyway, I filled an application out. I was 15 years old. My mother took me up there, and I remember filling the application out, looking out the window at her, and she says she always remembered because I asked her, filling out the application, I said, she goes, so I put 5 on the application.
Oh, okay.
I'll just never forget that. Anyway, when I was walking out the door, this Hispanic lady took my application, and I heard her say, "He looked good."
Oh.
That's all I heard her say. So that got me excited, so I went out the door and got home, and they called me that same day, said, "Come up for an interview." So I went for an interview, and they hired me, and I worked there all through high school. And then when I got to be 18, for some strange reason, the owner said he wanted to sell it to me and another employee. So he did, and it's been in the family ever since. I don't own it anymore. He owns it, my brother.
Yeah.
He started working, he was in high school too, so that was my high school job. And it was my job until I was 30. Then I had an interest in real estate, so I became a realtor when I was 30.
There you go.
So I worked there from 15 to 30. Well, actually, I kept working there. I only retired when I was 65, which was 3 years ago. I only worked part-time a couple of nights a week helping them out. So I worked there from the time I was 15 to 65 for 50 years.
Wow. So a side note on that, I actually gave a talk on Don Juan's one time, had never met Jim before, didn't know he was an owner. He was in the audience and I did the whole presentation. And then later he comes up to me and says, "I'm Jim Parker." I'm like, no way. I said, "Did I get it right?"
Well,
He's like,
actually, you had asked my brother, he was the owner at the time. You'd ask him to come, for some reason, he didn't show up.
Okay.
And I heard you were doing this talk about Don Juan's.
Yeah.
So I went to listen to it, and then,
I'm glad I knew after the fact
Yeah.
instead of before. I'd have been way too nervous. All right, so Martha?
Well, the only job I had while I was going to school was in high school. I think during my 10th and 11th, and part of the 12th grade, I worked at Woolworths on weekends, where it's right downtown Grand Prairie on the corner.
Mm-hmm.
Made 75 cents an hour.
Wow.
That
Wow. Big money.
Wrong place.
what
All
year was
right.
that? What year
So
was that?
Bonnie?
Probably, see, I graduated in 61, probably 58, 59, and 60.
Well, I started at $1.50 an hour in 1972. So
There you go.
glad to get that.
Well, I got free movies, so there. I worked at the Uptown Theater. I had just turned 12, couldn't get a job. I'd been babysitting, but a friend of mine was going to start working up there, and she didn't. But I got a job up there, made $1.50 a shift. Shift was 6 hours. I made the same amount that I made babysitting, 25 cents an hour. But I got half-price concessions and free movies. So I just worked there for the summer, right before junior high, so it wasn't too bad. But other than babysitting, in those days, parents had one car. At least mine did. Mother didn't work. She didn't have the car that often, so me getting to a job was not going to be easy. So I just babysat all around the neighborhood, church.
Well, so I think everyone did say what year you graduated from Grand Prairie High. So say again one more time. What year?
Yeah, I graduated from Grand Prairie High,
What year?
1947.
1947?
75.
61.
64. She's just testing some memories.
Well, speaking of memories, growing up here, what was your favorite childhood memory?
Favorite what?
Favorite childhood memory? What was your favorite thing about growing up in Grand Prairie?
Oh, well, of course, we had a farm down there and had a creek run to it, and a lot of good palm trees, and I really enjoyed the farm. I was going to be a farmer, but the droughts from 1950 to 1956 kind of put a halt to that.
Right.
And then the next year it rained all year, so that put the cap on it. So I come to town and went to work for the post office. I had been carrying the rural routes for both Route 1 and Route 2. I think they felt sorry for me, with all this drought that's going on. And so I had plenty of time to carry the mail for the rural routes, both rural routes. One of them went out there where the airport is now.
Okay.
Yeah. And the other one went over as far as Miss Baird's farm in Arlington.
Okay.
So I was very familiar with all the territory in Grand Prairie at that time.
Now, did you do that in a car or?
Yeah, oh yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I remember one time I was out on Sandy Lane and I had this Ford where the back window lifted up so you could get air. Well, I was sidling on there and delivered that mail and all that tailpipe stuff was coming into this car. And so I got sicker than a dog, so I headed for home.
Oh, I can imagine.
And I got poisoned with
Carbon monoxide
carbon
poisoning.
monoxide poison.
Yikes.
And so
I would call that a design flaw.
I was really sick there for a couple of days.
I can imagine.
But they come got the mail, they delivered the mail, somebody did, I don't know.
My goodness. So Jim, what was your favorite memory growing up in in Dallas and this area?
Well, I'll speak mainly about Grand Prairie. My best memories are going to my grandmother's farm on Arkansas Lane, which is right across where the police station is now. So and that was way out in the country then. So I remember going out there, and then I remember the Calvary Baptist Church. We were very active in that church, so I knew all those people, and I went to church camp and all that kind of stuff. And then I remember my brothers, we liked to go to stores, so coming downtown, we'd walk or rode our bicycles and go to the different stores. And at that time, there was other stores, little shopping centers down the street. So those are my biggest memories of Grand Prairie.
Awesome.
When I was growing up.
Growing up?
Well, a lot of memories, but I had a best friend that lived right over in Indian Hills, pretty close to where I lived, and we would hang out at her house, and that was a really good time because her mother would buy her all the latest Elvis Presley records. And so we would spend time listening to those records, and then I had gotten a new bicycle for Christmas when I was 11, one of those big, it was a big J.C. Higgins, nice, and we would ride those bicycles all over this town, from one end to the other, as far south, as far north as you could go. And we knew this town, and we wouldn't come home until dark. That was fun.
Yep.
Well, I had quite a few. Starting in Avion Village, it was a community, and it literally still is. The parties that they would have at the community center, and everyone lived on a cul-de-sac, and it was probably 9 houses. It was a street light. Well, all the kids would play out there at night. We'd get to run around the street light and play games and do stuff. And that's where I met a lot of people, when I was very young. Elmer Davidson's daughter was one of them. She didn't say anything bad about you. Anyway, but there were lots and lots of people that I met that I then knew later on in years as an adult. But we had a lot of fun with parties. There was a tennis court there at the time too. Turner Park, lots of fun things, Anyway, I think probably I'll say most unique thing that I had fun doing is when we moved onto Carrier Parkway in 1954. Carrier had a big gully right down the middle. They had not put in the pipes and filled it in. And so we would get down in the pipes and we would go down under Hill Street. Well, Carrier Parkway was only 2 blocks long at that time. It dead-ended at Hill and it dead-ended at Burleson. And so we could go down and go under at Burleson. My mother was not happy when I came home muddy. But we'd also go crawdad fishing in the creek down there behind the Burleson Street. But then they finally, after a couple of years, they finally got that median filled in. And it wasn't as skinny as it is now. It was twice that wide because there were only 1 lane going and 1 lane coming. And we played ball. We played in the street. That's all we did. We played in the street. And I don't think anybody can do that now. Anywhere in Great Prairie probably, but especially then on Carrier. But that was a lot of fun. Just, all the neighborhood kids, as soon as we got home from school, we were out there. We had softball games out there. We rode our bikes. We skated in the street. So, just a lot of fun. Oh, and the skating rink.
Yeah.
On Saturday mornings.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, I have a couple of memories, too, that you spawned, and you each spawned for me. So for 6 weeks, I went to Crockett Elementary School, and my mother worked for the post office. She was the first female full-time letter carrier. I don't know what year you left the post office, but this was back in the early 70s. And so going to Crockett, I started 2nd grade early, because I had started 1st grade early, so I was still 6 years old for the first month of school. I would come out of Crockett at 6 years old and walk up 5th Street, cross Jefferson, cross the railroad tracks, cross Main, and sit in the break room at the post office and wait for my mother to get off work. Now, my mother would be arrested for child abuse, letting a 6-year-old walk up and cross these major roads. But so I did that for about 6 weeks. And then we moved to Indian Hills, where I lived on Highland Street. I met my best friend, who we're still best friends to this day. My middle daughter is even named after her. And we would collect bottles. Remember, Coke bottles were a nickel. And there was a big bush on Prairie Street, and we would store our bottles in the bush. And when we had enough in the summertime to spend 35 cents, we'd have 7 bottles we'd each, and we'd cash them in, and we'd go swimming at Cottonwood Park. And so that's some of my favorite memories growing up when I was real little. But anyway, so y'all spawned that on me. So anyway.
You lived in Indian Hills number 2.
Indian Hills #2, yes. Not the original part of Indian Hills, but we were at 1114 Indian Hills, Highland, 1114 Highland. Yep. I can still tell you my phone number too.
Used to be a cotton field.
Yes.
J.A. Airedale on that land.
Uh-huh.
And, of course, when we come to town, I said, Dad, you know, this land's gonna be valuable someday. I said, we're gonna try to buy some. He said, what do you think we're gonna buy it with?
Now, did you say the last name was
Yeah,
Adair?
we're dirt farmers.
Oh. Did you say it was owned by Adair?
J.A. Airedale.
Interesting. This is kind of a tragic story. When we had first moved in onto Highland Street, further up Highland, on Highland where it curves, at the northern side of it, there was a family with the last name Adair. I don't know if it's still the same, the same family, but the mother and the daughter were murdered by the boyfriend and put into the shed, and they weren't found for a few days. And my mother told us you can't walk around for a while until they found the person that killed them. Anyway, it was terrifying. It was back in 73, I think, when that happened. But the last name was Adair, and
I don't
Adair
think
owned
it's
the
him
land.
because he only had one boy.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, anyway, kind of scary there. All right, so growing up, did you have a best friend?
Yes, his name was Ansel Hubbard. And he went to Calvary Baptist Church, and he was a big boy. I weighed about 100 pounds, he weighed about 200. But we had a lot of good times together. We'd go to Brazos River, Weatherford, and places like that, fish, spend the nights, and so. And I went to, his parents carried me with them to visit the big cave in New Mexico, Carlsbad.
Carlsbad.
Yeah, that was my first trip.
Out of Texas.
And they got bored, right over West Texas, all we got counting them light poles,
Yeah.
That old 36
Long
Chevy
drive.
just do about 50 miles an hour. It was a long trip, but we really enjoyed it.
Now, did you stay lifelong friends with him?
Did what?
Did you stay lifelong friends with
Oh,
him?
yes. He's been dead probably 15 years.
Oh, I'm sorry
Yeah.
for that. Jim,
What was the question again?
did you have a best friend growing up?
Not really. I had lots of acquaintances, and the guys at church I was involved with them. I went to school with them also, so I was always doing things with the church mainly. But I wouldn't say I ever really had a best friend, but I had lots of friends and acquaintances we did things with. But mostly with me is our family. That was my best friend. We did everything with our family. My brothers, my parents, my cousins, and we had, a lot of them lived right here in Grand Prairie, so we was always going to his house, and he had a son who was my age, and we graduated the same year. And so with us, it was family.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Martha, did you have a best friend growing up?
Well, I had that best friend that we went bicycle riding with. I had her until probably through junior high. Her name was Evelyn Chamberlain, and she lived on Highland Drive over in Indian Hills too, you call it.
Yeah.
And I'd been in high school, I had lots of friends, that Pat Daugherty was one of them, and she's since passed away. But, yeah, and didn't really have any that are still lifelong friends, I guess. I've got a lot of new friends now through the years, so.
Okay. Bonnie?
Well, a best friend, yes. When she moved to Grand Prairie at about 18 months, and we knew each other in church. We grew up together, and of course did a lot of church things together, but went all the way through school together too. And but lots of friends along the way. That's one of the reasons our reunion committee has so much fun planning our high school reunions, because we are all still good friends.
Yeah.
We all still live here. So it's, yeah, but the one good friend, she does live in Waxahachie now, but Georgianne Collins. And, just ran around town, spent the night, did all the silly stuff girls do growing up.
Yeah. So as a teenager, what was your favorite thing to do? Like, where did you go hang out? Did you have a hangout spot with your friends?
No, I was a big hunter and fisherman.
Okay.
Yeah, we had out south of town where where they play those games out there, soccer fields.
Oh, yeah.
Well, there was a hunting lodge out there that had been abandoned, and I'd purchased me 5 duck decoys, and And so the boys, some of my friends in high school, a couple of boys, friends, and we'd go out there and I did the calling. You know, I'd set out the ducks and they'd shoot. But I'd do the calling, because I was good with the duck calling. I was really quiet.
Now, was Mountain Creek Lake there yet?
Huh?
Was Mountain Creek Lake there yet?
Oh, yes.
It was already there?
Yes, it
Okay.
was built in 1938.
Okay, I thought it was the 30s, so.
And so I was a big hunter and fisherman. I remember one of my neighbors was Miss Rummel, H.B. Rummel. And I remember when she first took me, I was about 10 years old. She took me down to Fish Creek to fish. And she could catch fish when other people could not catch fish. It was amazing how that woman could catch fish. And I remember my first trip down there, we went under that bridge, and, set out a cane pole with a cork. And I remember that cork going under and it was traveling like this. And she says, "Set the hook." That was my first grip. Caught a big old crappie about that big.
Oh, nice.
And so I was hooked in. We went fishing with her many times.
Oh, that's
Out there,
pretty cool.
Old Mountain Creek Lake, yeah. They really had some good fish out there. Mr. Couch and Mr. Roy Reed would come by, I'd be plowing out there on the tractor, they'd come by and eat them as they got off. They'd go out there and fish about an hour. And they'd stop and pick me up, and they had a rod and reel for me, I'd go out and fish with them.
Oh, that's neat. Now, Roy Reed's daughter Shirley is a member. She comes every once in a while. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember Shirley very well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, she was the only child of Roy and Maggie Reed. And Maggie was always really dressed pretty, had the hair, beautiful hair, made up constantly. Of course, she was in the public all the time.
Right.
But I remember how beautiful she was and how she dressed so good. And then there was one other lady I'll tell you about if you ever asked me about it.
Oh, well, now you've got us intrigued. Now you have us intrigued. You have to tell us.
Well, back in the late 1930s and early 40s, there was a lady here named Miss Allday. Does anybody remember the Allday dress shop?
No.
Allday, it was down on South Center. There was a church there on, I don't know what that road was. It wasn't Grand Prairie Road, but it's the next road up. And there was a church there, and I think it was Church of Christ, no, Presbyterian.
It was the first Presbyterian church.
Presbyterian, okay, I remember being there, it had a big tower.
Southwest.
Yeah, well, her dress shop was right next door. And Mrs. Allday was very friendly with men and women. But anyway, she made a mistake one time of going to Powers Cafe, which was run by Jim Powers and his brothers, Ward and Tom.
Okay.
And she went down there for breakfast, which is the old boys' hangout. So word got out that she was being too friendly with the men, and we did have some phones back then. And so you know how that happens, they got to going around this all day. Yeah, we were a little shaky here, So,
Having breakfast with the men.
yeah, so that didn't go over good. It wasn't long till she was gone from Grand Prairie.
Oh, no. They ran her out on a rail. She ate breakfast with
Well,
their
I don't know
men.
what it was. She was gone before World War II, I don't know that.
Oh, man. That's awesome. I love it. All right, Jim.
What's the question?
You remember to get worse than I, boy.
Did you have a favorite hangout when you were a teenager?
Favorite hangout?
With your cousins, of course.
Don Juan's.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
I didn't really have a favorite hangout. I remember back then, a lot of high school kids, whatever, cruised behind Jack in the Box, and I cruised back there sometimes.
Yep.
I wouldn't say it was a
Jack's Alley.
hangout at all.
Yeah.
My hangout was just go to work, go home, get out, go to school, go to church, and then our family stuff.
Right,
Was
okay.
Dairy Queen still there then?
Well, the Dairy Queen, we went to, business hangouts that I wouldn't call them a hangout, but we went to. The Dairy Queen, Mr. McLary ran it. We loved to go there for hamburgers, and there was a place down there that sold these other hamburgers, 5 for $1. I think it was called Chiefs.
Yeah.
And then there was a place called Hot Donuts run by the Vaughn family. The guy, his mom and dad, we call it Hot Donuts, I think it's Southern made, but
Okay,
those are places that we frequented back then.
okay.
Yeah, the Dairy Queen was built in 1950 by a man named A.C. Hubbard.
Oh,
That was
okay,
my best friend's father and mother.
okay,
And it was built in 1950.
okay.
And it was a hangout for the kids back then. And quite a few fights started there, you know, because they, you know, Austin boys would come over and then we'd have a big fight, and so, but I wasn't there, because I was out at the town on the tractor, you know, but I hear about all that stuff going on at the Dairy Queen. And like he said, he sold it to Mr. McNary. Mr. McNary bought it, him and his father-in-law bought it. And Gib would come over to the fire station a lot and visit with us, and we'd go over there and eat dinner. You know, sometimes we'd be late on, we'd order a hamburger, get a call, and come back to 4 o'clock. And he'd always have a good hot hamburger when we get back. And so he finally joined the volunteer fire department, Mr. McNary,
Now, where was the Dairy Queen?
right next to the fire station.
Oh, okay.
Right there.
That building is still there, no? They tore the.
It's still there.
Oh.
It's some kind of cafe or something now.
It's the green space right west of, almost adjacent to the
Okay,
firehouse.
Right next door to the fire station.
okay, all right,
On the west side.
Yeah.
okay, got it. The old fire station.
The old fire
Now,
station.
Gastro Bar, yeah. All right. Martha, did you have a favorite hangout spot?
Well, like I said a while ago, I just hung out mainly with my friend down at her house, and we would go hang out at Turner Park Pool mostly, and at the skating rink, the roller rink. Kind of ironic that we hung out at Turner Park Pool so much, and I ended up teaching swimming lessons there to kids, and that is where I met my husband. He was home from college in 1959 and was a lifeguard there for the summer, and that's where I met him. So Turner Park Pool has been great in my life.
I thought maybe you were going to say he wanted to take lessons from you.
No, he was also in the Navy Reserve, a frogman. He was going to frogman school, so
he knew how to
he
swim.
knew how to swim.
All right.
Well, I'm kind of like Jim. Church was a big hangout, and of course, just the neighborhood. By the time I got old enough, I guess, to be able to hang out, you know, if parents would drop us off somewhere, it was always the skating rink. And not too many other places, you know, until we got cars or knew somebody with a car. I never had a car until I got a job and bought my own. So, you know, I think the skating rink was the biggest hangout for us. Now, if Mother would allow me with a friend to go uptown, and we just kind of roam those 2 blocks of downtown, you know, we'd go into Ray's Music Shop, or we'd go into Penny's, always went into Woolworths. Had to go back and watch all the fish and the turtles and the birds and
That's
stuff.
the department I worked in.
Well, Mother would never let me buy any of those. Anyway, but you know, as far as really hanging out with friends, it was the skating rink. I have friends still who talk about the skating rink, and most of them grew up right around here, so they walked there. And 2 of my friends were in lots of skating tournaments. Even one of them, after we graduated from high school, was in skating races.
Interesting. Now, the skating rink, was that the one that was across from Lee, or was it a different one?
This one over here.
4?
No, right, 2 blocks over.
15.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't even know there was one here.
Yeah.
Interesting. I know.
Stephanie, something new.
There you go.
That never happens.
Early on, they had portable
That
skating
was the
rinks.
skate.
Portable, well, they have the
Me,
portable
always.
ice skating rinks now
Yeah.
here in Grand
They had
Prairie.
one down on Poland Street, down on the east end of town. I remember a big tent, and the kids go down there and skate.
On which street?
Poland and the street that runs across there, it's where the fire station was on it. I worked there for 5 years, so I remember not getting that.
So they would just set up a roller skating rink?
Yeah, it was a little skating
Where
rink.
Fire Station 2 is? Fire Station 2
Yeah.
on that corner? And they set up on there? That's not, that street's name has been changed.
Pine was across the street.
Pine?
Pine
Mhm.
run
So
into the
that's over-
street.
Yeah, I know where Pine is. Interesting.
It's a little bitty fire station.
Yeah.
I'm gonna test my cousin.
But there wasn't 2 of us working, so it didn't make a difference.
There you go.
We had plenty of room.
Well, Jim, you mentioned what we called Jack's Alley, because it was Jack in a Box, and then across the street was Jack's Auto Supply, and the parking lot that ran behind Main Street we would all cruise up and down, and it baffled me why the police disbanded us, because they had all the teenagers in town in one spot, and they could have patrolled us, but instead, I guess they got complaints that we were making too much noise or something, so they kind of disbanded us, wouldn't let us hang out there on Friday nights anymore. Anyway, so you guys mentioned the Dairy Queen. Was there any other favorite restaurants that you had that you would go to on occasion?
Yes, I remember the first, what they call it, dine-in or whatever. Now I can't remember, but it was down past the Dairy Queen, and it was a drive-in.
On Main Street.
What, Whip In, something like that, I can't remember
Are you
now.
talking about Weber's root beer stand?
Huh?
Or
No, it
Weber's?
wasn't Weber's,
What Weber's?
it was something else, but it was the first drive-in. And I know the name of it right now, my memory's not that good anymore, but anyway, it was the first drive-in in Grand Prairie.
Interesting.
And it had a cute name, Drive-In or something like that. And so, anyway, it was really popular there for a long time. And I didn't go there very much because, you know, if I lived in town. We only lived in Grand Prairie during 1940. We moved to town for 1 year. My dad sold the farm. We got the road to our house was about a half mile, and it was dirt road. And when it rained, he couldn't get out, so he had to park his truck. He worked at the V.F. Cookies Company in Dallas. And so he had to park the truck up there, and then me and my brother going to school, had to walk. We'd be 6 inches taller than we got when we go catch the bus, you know.
Yeah.
And so he really got tired of that because we both got pneumonia one year standing down there in that rain and snow. And so he said, I'm selling this place, this is the last thing I do. So he traded and had a house up here on the Northwest 12th. And Mother wanted to move to town. You know, women don't like to move to town. So we did move up there for a year in 1940. I brought my Shetland pony to
town. You had it in your backyard?
Yeah, I had my Shetland pony up there. It was pretty open.
Well, then when you, after the year was up, where did you move?
We went back to the farm.
Back to the farm, okay. All right.
And we lived in well, it was a shack for me and my dad and my brother lived in this thing for about 2 months during the winter time. And it was a little, I guess, the people that worked for Mr. Krabby Smith there lived at one time. Or they weren't slaves, I don't think, but anyway, it had a little pitcher pump out in front. If you wanted water, you got out there and poured that pitcher pump, you know. And see the floor through the deal. So we was only there about 2 months, but I'll never forget it. It was cold. Man, it was cold. We didn't have any good heat, you know.
Oh, no.
I remember we used to go to see my grandma in Dallas. She lived on Ohio Street, and we'd go there quite often when I was a young man. And I remember we'd go there, and I remember coming back when you went up Chalk Hill. It wasn't cut down like it is now.
Right.
Yeah,
I remember when it was.
yeah, we couldn't wait to get there to get that. Hopefully it was crowd. But anyway, the thing was, when I look out in this western territory, one single light. People don't believe that, but I'll tell you it's the truth. Because I've come down it many a night. And there'd be one light. I don't know if it was in Grand Prairie or Arlington. But you come off there down, you get up to the dark place, you know.
Right.
You can't find it. You got plenty of lights.
Right, right.
But we thought that was so fun coming down. And the old cars couldn't go up that hill. The Model Ts that had the gas tank in the front by the windshield up there, it was gravity flow.
Oh.
So if you go up, no gas gets to the carburetor.
Oh,
But
there you
if you
go.
back up,
Oh, you would back up the hill?
you back up the hill. And I've been in a car that did that.
Oh,
A
that's
1926 turn car, some neighbors had a blue color. All them cars were blue for some reason, I don't remember why. But we went to Cedar Hill, and it was the same way over there. It was only one way to get to Cedar Hill. That was the old Beltline Road. It's not the new Beltline Road. That was the old Beltline Road. Went by the cemetery in clear to Cedar Hill. And I remember we used to come down a hill where we'd get as fast as we could, and we'd cut off the motor to see how far we could coast up the hill.
That's awesome.
So we all made a good trip out of it.
Yeah,
And he's
definitely.
living to tell about it.
Exactly. Okay, so back to the restaurants, Jim. Other than, your favorite restaurant, of course. Was there any others that your family would go to?
The ones that I remember in my generation were, the most popular one was the Red R.
Oh, yeah, Red
Gibbs is
R
pretty popular. Dairy Queen, of course, is popular. It's the only one around. And those three back in my day, Chief's Hamburgers was also very popular. Hot Donuts. There was a Dunkin' Donuts there for a while.
I remember Dunkin' Donuts.
Mr. Quick,
Mr. Quick was there for a while. There was a Drummer Boy there for a while. There's a lot of them come and go. There was some little like drugstore that had a fountain. Cicero's?
Cicero's, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that place.
And then Miller's had a fountain too.
Miller's Fountain too, yeah.
There was two drugstores, there was Miller's, and across the street was another drugstore. And I can't
Is that
remember.
Cicero?
Hancock.
Hancock, yeah.
Hancock, and I always went to
Yeah.
Hancock, because he had the prettiest drainage top, you know, and everything. And you could order a malt for 25 cents.
Oh, that's
And
awesome.
they set out the whole thing there for a while. And I don't know what happened, but then they started just setting out the glass. So they just kept cutting down on the shakes, they got where you didn't hardly get any.
Bummer.
The Red R and Kips were two of the most popular ones in my opinion.
Okay, I remember Red R's. Martha, did you have a favorite?
Well, I liked all of those that have just mentioned, but I used to go to Miller's Drug Store a lot, and there was that Ruth's Delicatessen that was right around the corner. Had good sandwiches at lunch, and Bert's Dog House was right down on Main Street, and of course the Griddle, it was called then.
It was the Griddle from 55 to 66, and then it was Don Juan's.
The one I forgot was Theo's, which is still there. So.
Oh, yeah, Theo's Drive-In.
Places I would usually go.
Bonnie?
I was going to mention Theo's too. Like I said, I didn't have a car, but friends in high school did, and we'd go to the Bowles Park and play tennis during our tennis time from school. But we didn't always play tennis the whole time. We'd go into Theo's. So, and one of my friends had a car, so anyhow. But I do remember Daddy bringing the Chief's hamburgers home. And they were $5 for $1, and there were 5 in the family, so that's exactly what we needed. And that was before I was in high school. But yeah, of course the Dairy Queen. We didn't go out and eat a lot. I mean, our family just did not go out and eat. It was a rare occasion. When the Red R was built, Red Richardson was a member of our church, and his daughter and I were friends. And so he asked my mother to be the hostess. So I went to the Red R probably a little bit more often than I had ever gone to any restaurant to eat. And we didn't really have a lot of restaurants in Grand Prairie. We had fast food. But anyway, as far as the Red R, you know, the food was good, everything was good. Red's chili was out of this world. And the lady that made the pies and the cinnamon rolls, you know, people still talk about that, especially the cinnamon rolls.
Especially cinnamon rolls.
But I think the most fun was probably the Dairy Queen for everybody. You could not walk, well, you could step in the back door, but you couldn't go in to where the counter was. There was no way to eat inside. You had to stay outside. And that's just because everybody got to congregate back there behind it, or what little space there was to park in front. You just, you know, it was just a place to visit, even though you didn't go in and sit down.
Right. One of my favorites from elementary school until high school was Bob's Burger and Shake.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about this.
Yeah,
One of the best.
or next door, going into Edelman's and getting a sandwich from the counter in the back. And then if my dad wanted liver, we had to go to Wyatt's cafeteria. So, I know, ew, right? Anyway, one thing I don't eat is liver. Anyway, all right, so.
One other thing
yes.
about Chiefs, I remember we used to, there was 4 boys and a mom, so 5, so it worked perfect. And my dad was not there. But we didn't have the dollar to buy the hamburgers. We'd have to go sell some Coke bones.
Yep.
So we'd have enough money to buy those hamburgers. And we didn't get no drinks. All we wanted was those 5 burgers. That's all we could afford.
Right, right. I love it. Now, a few of you mentioned church. You guys specifically said Calvary Baptist. Did you go to Calvary Baptist too?
Well, yes, I've been going to Calvary Baptist since 1936. And so I'm still going, and when I can. And they're fixing to build, I understand my pastor said last week that they had a new announcement this coming Sunday. You know, when we sold the property down in Grand Prairie, they got enough money to build another church, but COVID hit.
Right.
Yeah, everything went out of sight. So now we don't have enough money to build this. It's been 4 or 5 years ago.
Right.
So it's just been sitting there. There was some property out, way out south of town.
Okay.
And I understand now, I guess maybe we got a sugar daddy on the hook.
Oh my.
I'm hoping that's true. And Woody-
This is all
Woody's
days
been going
come
there-
back.
Woody's been going there all his life.
Oh.
And Woody's mother, she had a boarding house down on Main Street, and when we used to put up the Christmas lights for the, we had those Christmas lights that runs from the fire stations down to 8th Street, and they'd run across, it was real pretty.
I've seen pictures where
I've seen pictures,
it's
yeah.
crisscrossed across Main Street,
Really
yeah.
pretty, and she would cook breakfast for us firemen, and we stopped there and eat breakfast. And we put out the Christmas lights for his mother's boarding house.
At the boarding house. And where was the boarding house?
Across from Watson's, 2 doors down from Griddle System where Don Juan's is now.
Interesting.
It was Griddle System, Dr. Sawicki's house, the car lot, and then my mother's boarding house.
So
It's two-story?
west of Don Juan's?
No, it'd be east.
Coming back this
West,
way.
yeah.
Oh, west?
West,
Oh, okay.
West of Don Juan's?
yeah.
It was
Okay.
two-story house?
Yeah.
Well, there was that big white house, Dr.
Yes,
Swift's.
2-story.
Yeah, it was next to him, next to there? Oh.
Yeah,
I
wow.
remember that house. I didn't know who lived there.
And Martha, where did you attend church?
First Baptist, right downtown, and went there all until we built the new church out on Mayfield, and I'm still
Still a
very
member?
active there.
All right, and Bonnie, I know, but I want you to share with everyone else.
Well, I actually was christened at Calvary Baptist Church.
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
Mother's cousin and her husband, Roland, went there. And so when we first moved to Grand Prairie and I was born, started going there, Daddy had been Presbyterian. We're talking ancestors had been Presbyterian. And so he just couldn't get used to it. And there's a couple of stories that I'm not going to mention that I'm not sure that they're exactly true. But anyway, I had my cradle roll certificate that Daddy framed, but we ended up at First Presbyterian Church. And so I was baptized there. And I later moved after 43 years to First Methodist, but I'm back at First Presbyterian.
And sadly, you're closing
And
the
they're
doors.
closing
Yeah.
May 25th.
Yes.
Yeah, very,
Yes.
very sad, because they were founded in 1907, and I knew all of the charter members growing up.
Wow. It's
Yeah,
amazing.
Dr. Copeland was one of them.
Mhm. And the current location was, the land was donated by Dr.
It was.
Copeland.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it was his peach orchard.
Mhm.
Yeah. Now, where are you meeting now, since you're not at the original location?
We were out at the Epic at the theater.
Oh, okay,
We've been there for about a year.
okay, good. I'm glad that it's still, yes, sir?
Well, another thing is, his mother, my grandmother, she was one of the founding members of that church,
Oh, okay.
way back when, and she was
Okay.
very active in that church.
Gotcha.
So,
Yeah, I remember the 3 ladies that come to visit Mother, and Miss Powers, Tom's wife was one of them, Miss Tinsley, and another lady, I have to keep trouble with having remembered her name, but she was very active in the church. But that's how we got the Cold Calvary Baptist. It's just been organized for 1 year, so
Okay,
we started with 1 year after we were organized.
really cool. Well, I have a few more questions, but we're gonna take just a brief break and maybe 10 minutes and come back and we'll finish up. Let you guys have a chance to take a little break and get something to drink, maybe go to the facilities, and then we'll come back and finish up. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
Okay, can you direct us to Chiefs? Because Dan and I are getting hungry back here.
So we're about to get started, but I have to say, my daughter came up to me and I was remiss on mentioning one particular restaurant. My father-in-law owned the Alamo restaurant for 31 years. Yeah, so it was Pete and Tony's Alamo Restaurant, and Tony's my father-in-law. He's still alive. We lost Pat, his wife, last year.
He is
He's
92.
No, he's 93. He just turned
Okay.
93 in January. So he doesn't live local anymore. He moved in with my oldest
Didn't your
sister-in-law
daddy run a house?
and up
Your
in
daddy
Wichita
had a
Falls.
cafe
But
in town, didn't
we go, Sarah and I go every other month to go to church with them and go to lunch.
We'll be
So
going
Oh, your
home.
Mother Day.
We'll be going next Sunday.
anyway, all right. So we've talked about growing up in Grand Prairie. So now let's talk about your adult life in Grand Prairie. So when and how did you meet your spouse and her name?
Well, on South Center Street, there was a feed store there called Red Martin's Feed Store. And we bought our feed for the chickens and the hogs or whatever. And they had a Coca-Cola box out on the front. And I'd sit, but they'd go in and order for the feed and stuff, and I'd sit on this Coca-Cola box out there on the porch. Well, here come these two little girls prancing down the street, you know. And one of them was just, I was very attracted to her. She was very attractive. I said, I'll make a good wife someday. Well, what, as luck would have it, they come to church about the next year. They started the church.
There you
So
go.
then I got to really know her really well.
And what was her name?
Patsy Colson.
Okay.
And she chased me till she got me.
There you go. And what year was that? What year did you get married?
We got married in 1951, and we had our first child in 1952. And I had 5 children. 2 of them are deceased now,
Okay.
but I had 5 children. And we've lived in that house in 17 College now since 1954.
Oh, and you're still in the same house?
And, of course, I've added on to it a couple of times and built a big garage. When I moved there, you could see out, away from it, no houses. I've got pictures of when they built it in 1940, and there's no houses around.
Wow.
Evidently, it was pretty rare for it to be there because
And
of
it's
all
on College?
college, 17 College.
Okay, so it's at the 7th Street intersection or block. Interesting. That's pretty cool. I think, were there duplexes on College Street at one point back in the 60s?
Not to my knowledge.
No? Maybe it was on Church Street then.
Yeah.
Okay. So what were the name of your children?
My oldest boy is named Brent, and my oldest girl's named Susan, and she passed away several years ago. She married a pastor, and they pastored down in Greenberg, Texas.
Okay.
And then Bobby, he's passed away. He was the 3rd child. I had him just like I wanted. Boy, girl, boy, girl, boy.
There you go. You planned this out well.
Susan was my first, not Susan. What's my-
Stacy.
Stacy. She was my 4th child, and she was the active one. I think now they would say she had autism. She never sat anywhere, and she never walked anywhere. She'd run or
Oh,
hop
that
or
was
jump.
ADD.
She was hyperactive.
Hyperactive.
And she was a big
ADHD.
tomboy.
Oh.
Yes, ride bicycles and
Yeah.
all the humps down there, you know.
Yeah.
She was really active and a good athlete until she got in high school.
Okay.
But she was really a good athlete. And then Ward was my last one. He was named after his granddaddies, and he wasn't like any one of them.
And what was his name?
Ward.
Ward. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
He still lives that close to, he still lives there on the street down from me there.
I don't have a spouse, I never had a spouse, so.
So no spouse, no children.
I'll tell you about my parents though, but I'll add this first. I have heard family stories, and Pat did chase him until she got him.
There you go. I love it.
Funny story is my parents, my dad come here to work, and he knew someone that went to Calvary, and that person said, go with me, I'm going on a date with these 2 girls. And I'm going with this one girl, Marlene. You can go with Joanne, who was actually Pat's sister. So they went on this double date, but my dad liked Marlene better. So they exchanged numbers, and that's how they met.
There you go. There you go. All right. And how did you meet your spouse, and what year, and his name?
Well, I've already kind of said it earlier, but I met him at Turner Park Swimming Pool.
Right.
It was between my junior and senior year in high school, and I was teaching in the summer, and I was teaching YMCA swimming lessons to kids. And he had come home from college and was a lifeguard there. And so somehow we met. I knew his name because I had gone with my neighbors to watch him play football when he was, he was a real good football player in high school. But anyway, that's when I met him, and we started dating, and then we he had asked me to marry him. I said, no, I got to finish high school before I can get married. My daddy wanted me to go to college, but we got married in January of '61, and then my daughter was born in December of '61. Her name's Linda Carroll. And then we had a son named James Donald. I named my daughter after my two sisters, Linda and Carolyn. And then we had a boy, and we named him after my husband, Jimmy, and his brother, Donnie. And his name is Jimmy Don. And my daughter is 64 now, and my son yesterday was 62.
There you go. All right. Bonnie?
Well, John and I met
John, raise your hand.
after high school. He graduated the year before I did, but he had just moved to Grand Prairie, and right before he started high school. They lived in San Antonio, Fort Worth first. And so we didn't know each other in high school, and he was off at UT in Austin. And I got a job at Grand Prairie State Bank. And so that summer, well, actually it was at Christmas. I met him the first time when he came in for Christmas break, because he was the G.H. Turner Scholarship winner. And whenever he was in town, he came to the bank to work. They wanted him, in the bank, learning and all that stuff. And in the summers, he was there for the whole summer until he had to go back to college. So anyway, we met, and he didn't have much to say. Some of you might not be surprised at that. And I was working with several of my classmates from high school. So, we were still having fun. And so anyhow, but he'd work, and the lady that was sitting behind me in bookkeeping said to John, I didn't know this till a little later, you need to ask Bonnie out. Well, he didn't, and he didn't, and he didn't, and so the next summer, which would have been August of '65, we had our first date. And so, he's in college, and I'm working, I'm trying to pay for a car. There's no extra money. Should I tell this story? Our Friday night date often was to debit a checking account, either his or mine, for a bag of quarters, because we were looking for silver quarters. So we bring this literally, canvas bag full of quarters home, and then return them on Monday. So the debit and credit would just cross. So, and since I was in bookkeeping, I could keep track of all that. But really, that was a Friday night date. We were looking for silver quarters. But whatever we found silver, we replaced. So the bags went back with $500, just like they came out.
Oh, there you
Anyways, but that was, that was the date. I go to Austin to visit, go to a football game. But anyway, that's how we met when I worked at Grand Prairie State Bank, because he was working there just when he came to it from college.
What did you do for silver quarters?
We saved them.
Oh, you just saved
We
them?
sold them.
You
They
sold
were
them?
worth silver, so
Right.
they were
Well, we
worth
didn't
more
sell
than a
them right
quarter,
away.
30
We
cents.
said-
You can still do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're still worth more than a quarter.
Oh,
If you
yeah.
can find any.
We still had a lot of our coins we saved.
So,
Tell
how
me about
about your child?
And we had one son. John and I got married in August of '67, so we had dated for a couple of years. And he got his master's at North Texas. We moved up there. That was it. A year out of Grand Prairie, except we came back to Grand Prairie. And so anyway, the Vietnam War started. He ended up going there and came home, and a couple of years later, we thought, okay, we'll start a family, and Jeff was born in '74. And he's the only one, and got a good one, got our order checklist, everything came. So he has pretty much, he's either lived or worked in Grand Prairie all of his life, because although he lives in Arlington, he has taught at South Grand Prairie High for 15 years, and now has been at Grand Prairie High. I think this is his 14th year.
Tell them about your car.
The car that you were saving up
The car
for?
that you bought yourself, and then what happened to it all the time.
Oh my, well, I bought a car from Joanna Morrow, who worked at the bank. It was a great car, a little '62 Buick Special, it was red, and a nice little compact car. And in the first year I had it, now remember I grew up on Carrier Parkway. Well, at that point they had extended Carrier, and people were just driving fast down Carrier Parkway. It got hit parked in front of my house. It got hit parked in the grocery store parking lot. It got hit in the church parking lot. It got hit elsewhere. The only time the car was moving was when my sister was driving it. It got hit 5 times in the first year I had it.
Is that your story and you're sticking to it?
I'm sticking to it.
I've
It's
never
the
had
truth.
a red car since.
I'm
Never.
Yeah, that poor car. Anyway, that was my bank car, I call it, because I bought it from Joanna.
Your bank car or your bang car?
Banged up.
Sound like you got banged up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, I think I know the answer. All 3 of you raised your children in Grand Prairie, correct? Did they all go to Grand Prairie High or South Grand Prairie High?
Oh, no, it's Grand Prairie.
After what years did they go to Grand Prairie High?
Well, my oldest boy's 73, so I guess he went, he born in 52, so he'd had to go.
He graduated in 70 or 71, I forget which year.
Okay, 70, 71. And then you said that
Bobby graduated
there's
70.
one that's saying 75.
They all graduated from Grand Prairie High.
Okay, so in the 70s then, all of them?
Well, then, no, then the younger ones were probably in the 80s.
In the
They were about my brother's age.
Okay.
Stacy and Ward.
Johnson.
What year did you graduate?
87.
So, yeah,
Okay.
Stacy and Ward probably graduated.
In that time frame. Okay.
Yeah,
Martha, how about-
My daughter graduated in '80 and my son in '82, Grand Prairie High.
Okay.
Jeff in '92.
Oh, cool. All
And my
right.
brother graduated from Grand Prairie High School too, in 53.
Your mother did?
Yes.
Oh, pretty
Same high school
cool.
I did.
Pretty cool. So, you've already mentioned that you worked at the post office and the fire department. Do you want to talk about anything else where you worked? And what years you worked at the post office and the fire department?
Well,
And Johnson Services?
like I say, I wanted to be a farmer. I was a farmer. I liked to plow and I didn't particularly like to pick cotton, but you could hire that done.
Yeah.
But anyway, the good Lord didn't want me to be a farmer because he put me in a 6-year drought, then the 57 rain all year, couldn't get no crops in. So I went to work because since I was caring for the rural route, they wanted to hire me to take care of the incoming mail. And you had to work from 3 in the morning till 7 in the morning. Beat these trucks that come in, they loaded off of Southwest 2nd there. And so I worked there for 3 years, and I liked the work. I wasn't, but I was still trying to farm, and so I thought when my father-in-law, he was a volunteer fireman, he said, well, they're gonna hire some firemen in 1955. And he said, why don't you take the test and then you could farm and make some extra money. Well, that didn't work out good either. But anyway, in 1955, I went to work for the fire department.
Okay.
And I worked there 31 years. I held all the positions except fire chief. I held it sometimes because fire chief be gone, and I was assistant fire chief for 5 years. But I had to go back to captain so I could work to make some money because they just didn't pay. Pay was very poor back in those days.
And what year did you retire? From
1986.
86. And then what did you do next?
Well, I opened a little lawnmower shop there behind the new fire station. I opened a lawnmower shop. I had worked for Mr. Morrison down at his shop down on Davis Street, part-time. And I kind of like to fix little things like that. And so I thought, well, that'd be a good retirement thing. And I really did it for my son and my daughter. Because my son had epilepsy and my daughter was homemade. So I said, well, that'd be something they could do. But I couldn't get them to take interest in it.
Oh, no.
So I finally just sold it and got out of it. But I was there about 1980, well, we opened in 1985, and I quit somewhere around 2000, I think, and sold it to some other people.
We were talking before the meeting started, and when I was in my 20s, back in the 90s, I would take my my poor little old lawnmower up to Mr. Johnson, and he would fix it, change the oil. I always had an oil problem with it. Anyway.
Well, I had my paper route that I got fired from. And,
Sounds like you're really over that there, Tim.
And what was his name
You
again?
owned a grudge a long time, don't you?
You haven't held this very long, have you?
I didn't deserve to get fired. So then I went to work for Don Juan's, as I told you, and I stayed there till I was 30, and become the owner of it. And then I always had an interest in real estate and had rent houses, so I became a realtor when I was 30 years old, and I've been there, so that's 36 years now.
Nice.
For the same company right here in Grand Prairie.
And what's the name of the
Century 21 Judge Fight Company.
Judge Fight?
And they have changed names several times that I've never moved.
There you go.
So I can help you buy or sell a house.
Sounds like my dad with
Yeah.
LTV. All right, Martha.
Well, I went to work for the city of Grand Prairie on April the 1st, 1964, as a cashier in the, it was called Water Accounting Department now. Then it's Revenue Management now. And then I was promoted to head cashier, and then I was promoted to a billing clerk where we prepared the water bills based on the meter readings. And then the payroll clerk had gone to, we had just got our first computer system in the city for the water department. She went to that department, so my finance director asked me to come in there. So I went into the finance department and I did the city's payroll for 2 years. And then the manager of the water department had just walked out one day. It was a mess. And my boss, Mr. Harris, the finance director, called me into the office. What's he calling me in for? Well, they had decided they wanted me to come back to the water department as the manager. So I went back to the water department and I was manager of the water department for 14 years.
Wow.
Then there was kind of a problem over at the municipal court, and the city manager came down to my office one day and mentioned it and said, we'd like for you to go over to the court as the court director. And I said, well, I don't know a whole lot about the court. But he said, well, you can learn. So I went over to the court, and I was over there for 14 years, and then that's where I retired after 33 years for the city.
Wow.
But I had helped our computer software company in the implementation of our new court computer system. So when I decided to retire, my husband and I were going to travel. Well, the public safety computer company, Tiburon, asked me, they said, we've sold a court system out in Henderson, Nevada, and would you be interested in doing the training? So that's how I went to work for Tiburon. I went out there and I ended up working for them for 15 years with the court, probation, prosecution, and civil systems all over the United States doing training and system implementation. And then I retired in 2013 after my husband passed away. They were trying to train me on some new stuff and I couldn't concentrate anymore. I said, it's time for me to give it up.
Now, you were doing something when I met you, and you had a little plate, a big trailer, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
that was my husband and his sister, which I wasn't supposed
Food
to
truck,
have
I
to
guess.
help, but I ended up having, we had a pie shop down in Canton. And we had a big
Like a food truck.
36-foot, and the doors opened up, and you could watch it from one end to the other, to making the dough, to putting the pies together, putting them in the cooker, taking them out. A funny story, you know, some people are gripey. And so we had at that end of the trailer.
I haven't met any of those people, have you?
Been in customer service for 33 years, but anyway, this trailer was like this, and at this end was the door that would open, and that's where they would serve the public. And just inside that was right here was the cooker, and it was a big cooker. It cooked like, it was a big deep fryer, and it was probably 4 feet by 4 feet. It cooked, you know, a bunch of pies at the same time. And this lady came up to the window, and my husband happened to wait on him, and I was back there listening or whatever. She said, "I just want to know, are these pies fresh?" And he said, "Well, ma'am," said, "we got some that just over here on the tray that are about 400 degrees." She said, "Well, give me a dozen of them."
Yes.
Yeah, we sold a lot of pies. We were down there for 4 or 5 years until that's when I retired from the city. And, you know, the sister-in-law and brother-in-law had bailed out. You know, they thought they were doing all the work, but they weren't. And my husband we had 2 places actually, that main one and then another one down at the other end of the park. And it was just too much for one person, so he said, "You know, we don't have to do this." So that's when we sold the business, and we bought us an RV, and a lot of times I would have jobs, and my job with Chevron was a part-time job. So they would line up, and it would be like a week training, and then a week you'd have testing and whatever. It was a long process to get to go live. And anyway, we'd just travel then in the RV, and I'd go place to place when we could. A lot of times I would fly, but anyway, that's a long story. But
I'm going to force you to tell how that pie making is famous, Pengelly's pies. Where did Jimmy learn to do that?
okay, well, how that started was his mother and dad worked out at LTV, and she worked in the kitchen, and she would make pies, you know, and everybody loved the pies. So they ended up starting to make this, but she would make the big pies there. So they lived out at the Lakeview by the lake. And so they started their business making the small pies. And that's where Jimmy learned. I mean, him and his 2 sisters both worked in that pie shop. And then they had a place right down here on Davis Street where the bus station used to be. And it was a big place, and that's where they made most of the pies until his mother and daddy retired. And then,
I know.
yeah.
Bob said they were good. I remember they were very good.
Mr. Pengelly had the idea, you know, they'd have pies left over from day to day. So he said, "Why don't we sell these day-old pies for 10 cents each?"
Yeah.
Something like that. They were only 15 cents anyway, I think. But anyway, the firemen would come by almost every day and buy those day-old pies. Of course, Mr. Pengelly, he was a very gracious man. He would give them to them for even less than that.
Yeah, we also ate those steaks that were stale.
That's right.
Steaks.
Oh, thanks.
That little grocery store up on 14th Main, who was that, run that store? He lived at Mathis, wasn't he? Mathis, yeah, it's Mathis. He would sell us these day-old or week-old steaks, and we'd go over and buy those things, eat them.
So you had your meal and your dessert.
Yeah.
There you go. All right, so Bonnie, your turn.
Well, of course, I already told you about my first job at the Uptown Theater, and the second job, which was Grand Prairie State Bank. I had to find a job when we moved back from Denton before John went in the Army. So my father had started with Timco, and he retired from LTV in the 80s. But so he got me a job. You know, you just didn't go in and apply. You really kind of had to know somebody. And so thankfully I did. And so he helped me, you know, get to the right person. So I got a job. I'd been a secretary. And so I got a job at LTV and started there in September of '68. And it was not a foreign thing to me because I'd seen airplane stuff, you know, been to the plant, were for family things. But there was a whole world of terminology that I had never trained for. And so the very first day I walked in, hardly anybody had shown up yet. I guess I was just an overachiever. I got there real early. But I had to take an overseas call from England. And this was when we still had cable running under the ocean, and you were listening to the person with a British accent coming through that long cable, and I am transcribing on an electric typewriter that I had never used before, because I learned on the good old-fashioned keys, yeah. So my first morning was quite interesting. The cable would break up, and so I'm listening. I've got a little machine there that's talking, with nothing in my ear. And it's pretty quiet in there right then. So I'm doing all this typing and conversation, and I don't have time to ask a question. What was that? Or can you say that again? Or what was that word? So I just would skip a blank. I just leave a little space in hopes that my boss might know. And so anyway, that was, I would say, a good introduction to my job, and it got easier after that. And I worked there 2 years, amazingly, because I did get transferred from materials up to the engineering department right off of Jefferson in Building 6, and worked for one of the actually 2 assistant directors. And the escalation of the Vietnam War began to happen. Things were tapering down because they were pulling out. The war escalated, not on our part, but they were not building as many aircrafts, they were not supplying as many parts, and engineers were getting laid off. Lots of people were getting laid off. By the time I was laid off, probably on the other side of the hallway, there might have been 2 people left. My department still had the 2 assistant directors, and I'll say 6 engineers out of a possible 30, and I was the only secretary left at that point. And so it was, it was inevitable, it was coming, and it was not a great time for LTV. And when I first started there, it was bought, and then it went to Lingtemco bought. And so a lot of changes during that time period. The worst part of that job probably was walking from what we called the South 40, because you had to park way in the back. I walked into the materials, which was in an older building, but it was closer to the parking lot. I had to walk all the way, much farther, up to the Jefferson area. And that was not fun when it was cold, windy, and rainy. But it was an interesting thing. And then John came home, and I'd always wanted to sell Tupperware because I enjoyed the Tupperware parties. So I became a Tupperware dealer, and in about 3 months I was a manager, and I drove a company car and did that. It was about 10.5 years, and then I started teaching preschool, and I taught at Inglewood Methodist Church for several years. Anyway, then I opened a business in between some of that time. I just kind of keep doing things. My business was in Lancaster, Texas for a while, but then I moved it to Grand Prairie. And
With teaching tools, correct?
I worked at Teaching Tools.
Okay.
Judy, her sister owned Teaching Tools.
Okay.
Yes, when I closed my business, Judy called me and she said, Jane wants to retire. I need somebody to help in the store. And she knew I had run my business, so. Yeah, that was a lot of fun because I'd already been teaching, so I already knew a lot of things about the teaching part of it. And I worked there for about 14 and a half years, and Judy sold it. But then I got called by, I was a member at First Methodist at that point, and I got called by the director of their Mother's Day Out program, and they said, we'd like to start another class. So I went back to teaching for probably another 12 or 13 years.
Is that when Janice Helms was director?
Yeah. Yeah, and actually, they moved in that time period, and so she wasn't there. Yeah. Anyway, so I just, I've gotten to experience quite a few things.
Cool.
All around Grand Prairie.
So I think I know the answer to this question for all of you, and not for you, but do you still live in Grand Prairie? Still live in Grand Prairie? All right, well, I only have one question left. We're obviously recording this, and we're going to have it available for anyone who comes up to the museum to see it, so for generations to come. what would you want someone to know your legacy here in Grand Prairie was?
Well, I would say that we were very fortunate to be living in Grand Prairie. We've seen it grow from 1,500 to, I don't know what it is now, 200-something thousand.
It is.
And so, we lived through the bad parts during the Depression. I remember we couldn't go anywhere, we couldn't go to the doctor unless it was really serious. And it was just a good life. We were free, you never did lock your doors until later. Probably I had started locking mine in the late 60s. Because one night a guy walked in my house and he don't know. And he appears down at the end of my den, me and wife were watching television. We thought, you know, the house stayed open, the kids coming in and out. And we never did lock the door. Well, that put a stop to that, so, you know, things got a little worse as we went on. But we had so much freedom. My parents, I'd get my gun and go out and spend all day hunting out there south of town, on that creek that was back there. It's my private hunting place. Even though guy didn't want me on there. But he'd tolerate.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's just such a free life, you know. And now the kids, what are they going to remember? My great-granddaughter comes to see me, and she's got this telephone or tablet or something. I can't correspond with her. She's more interested in this, and so I'm really worried about what's going to happen to our next generation. Their minds are so clouded. That's the reason I told my son, I said, you know, we didn't have all that stuff to interfere with our mind. When something happened, it was there.
Right.
And I said, now I really worry about these young children that they 2 years old or younger, they got this phone. I don't understand why they do it. Well,
Some say it's progress, some not so much.
well, I'm really worried about it because I don't think it'll be good for the next year, for that little generation to be constant on this phone.
Right. As Jim starts texting. So, Jim, what would you want your legacy to be?
Nothing.
I have no idea. I can just say that Grand Prairie's been good to me, and I've enjoyed Grand Prairie. I got roots in Grand Prairie, and it's a good place to live. I know a lot of people growing up didn't like Grand Prairie, you know. Some people call us the armpit of the Metroplex for a while. But we got great leaders now, and it's a great city. It's just booming like never before, and there's amazing things coming to Grand Prairie. And since I'm a realtor and I sell in Grand Prairie, I know it's a popular place to be. A lot of people want to be in Grand Prairie for various reasons. So it's a great place to be. Always has been, it still is, and it's getting better.
Yeah, growing up, we always called it a bedroom community because there wasn't a lot of industry here. It was mostly just homes. And so people didn't talk much about Grand Prairie, but now
Well,
we're in the news
I've
all the
always
time.
heard worse than that. A lot of people just didn't think very highly of Grand Prairie, but that's changed.
It's very much changed. So Martha, what would you like your legacy to be here in Grand Prairie?
Well, I've always tried to be honest and fair in everything that I did, every job I had, everywhere. I've always worked hard. I've enjoyed all my family and friends, and I've been very blessed for all that. And I'm living a good life now and enjoying it.
There you go. Miss Bonnie?
Well, I could just say amen to that, but I'll add something.
Ditto.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly what everybody said, because I've seen a lot of changes, not near as many as Bob. But, you know, just the growing up on Carrier Parkway when it was 2 blocks long, and I used to look up the hill, which now goes up over the tollway. It's not a turnpike, I almost said turnpike, but I-30. I saw the cattle racing up there. And tumbleweeds would literally blow down that hill, and we'd have tumbleweeds come down Carrier Parkway in that 2-block stretch. You know, that's just, you know, my sisters don't remember much of that because they were so much younger. So that to me is kind of an interesting treasure. But if I don't tell people that, they're not going to know it.
Right.
And so I want my legacy to be, I think, part of it, besides the fact that I tried to do just what Martha said, you know, I've tried to meet people and enjoy people and get to know people and just, you know, be an advocate for not just Grand Prairie, but also people. But I want to save history. I want to preserve it, which is why I get involved. I was involved with the historical organization many years ago. You know, Ruthie didn't take no for an answer. We've talked about this several times with different programs. And you could not say no to Ruthie Jackson. Well, I don't have that much power and that much pull. But I did say something to a lady one time that she said, well, nobody's going to know my stories when I leave. We've been talking about, you know, just what we're talking about here today. And I said, you need to tell and write down your stories.
Yes.
Because you know them. Don't let somebody else tell your story, because it's not going to be right.
Exactly.
I remember one thing that I learned early in life. I was in Roy Reed's grocery. My mother was buying groceries. And they had those little paraffin bottles with some juice in it. Does anybody remember
Yeah, I
that?
remember
Oh,
those.
yeah.
A little paraffin. Well, I stole one of those. And it made me so sick, I'm down. So I learned to be honest from that day forward.
Well, I have a similar story. I didn't get sick, but I, in elementary school, stole a piece of gum at Edelman's. And when I was in my 20s, I went back and confessed to Mrs. Edelman and wanted to pay her for my little piece of gum. And she said, why do you think I kept it on the first shelf? It's because I knew the children would come after school and take a piece. So, yeah, I felt pretty guilty all that time. Anyway, well, does anyone have anything else they'd like to add about your memories growing up in Grand Prairie?
I will say this. Walt and I have lived here between 46 and 51 years. So we did not grow up here. I grew up in Oak Cliff. So my growing up experiences are very similar to what I heard today. I'm older than Martha and younger than Bob. Other than that, I'm one of the older ones here. So my growing up experience is about the same. But I wanted to mention, Jim works for Central 21 Judge Fight. The Judge Fight family and my family knew each other back in the 50s. They grew up in Oak Cliff at the church where I grew up. So there's a connection here. We found this out, I think, the first time I met Jim. That's how we made the connection. He knows the Fight children, I know the Fight children, and I'm trying to think if there's anybody else in here that situation. One of our members, Larry Wheat, and I went to the same, we attended the same elementary school in Oak Cliff, even though he was my brother's age, several years younger than me. So when I moved here in Grand Prairie, and Walt and I were talking about this just the other day, I came here in '79 because I was teaching at Carter High School in Dallas, and I needed a place easy to get to, and I drove out this way, and here was Grand Prairie. I took that first exit off of what was a new 20 up Beltline, and there were these townhouses up in there, just some new ones, and I went in and talked to somebody and bought one. I did not know in 1979 that in 1974 he had bought a townhouse, which happened to be right across the court from me, which we found out in 1987. We met each other in '87. But there were so few places to go, and we did not know about all of these restaurants that you all are talking about. We had to go into Arlington, let's say, to eat, because there was no Whataburger here. We liked Whataburgers. I had been accustomed to them from South Texas. I taught in Corpus Christi for a long time. So we were looking for things like that, and there were none. They built the 2 theaters out on the south side of 20, probably the Chili's, the Cheddars, I don't know when Spring Creek came in, but we have noticed the newer changes in Grand Prairie's history. And during, you see, I like to take pictures, and so does Walt. During COVID, one day we got in the car, and I can't find my pictures. We got in the car and drove around Grand Prairie taking pictures of things happening here in 2019. IKEA was being built. First Baptist Church was being finished. We came down to Theo's, took a picture of an empty parking lot, middle of the day, because of COVID. And so we've seen the newer part of Grand Prairie grow. You've seen the old part, and you're keeping the memories of that old part alive. Drive up and down here, and you see the old downtown Grand Prairie. We're just getting accustomed to that. Now, anybody who comes into Grand Prairie now, it probably doesn't know about this, or the Bankhead Highway, or any of the things that I've learned about since I've been a part of this group. But that's what I wanted to say. We are part of a new generation of people here, and I don't know how long. I heard Mike say he was been here off and on a few years, and I'm sure some of the rest of you can say the same thing. It's a nice place to live.
It's a wonderful place.
Back in the 30s, Bill Langford had a cafe on the corner of Southwest 2nd and Main. And for 10 cents, you could get a bowl of chili and those, what would they call those little round crackers?
Oyster crackers. Oyster crackers.
Oyster crackers. Yeah, for 10 cents, you could get, and he was it was so funny, when you order a hamburger, he usually had to run over to Sergeant Grocery, which was across the street, to get the hamburger, come back and cook it. And his son and me went to school together. In fact, he wound up fire chief, and I wound up fire marshal. And that's back in the 30s.
And which corner of Southwest 2nd and?
It was on the southeast corner. On the south side, on the south side.
On the south
Yeah,
side.
it was just a little airplane, he had some little stools, down one aisle, and a little counter. And it was pretty popular.
Oh, there you go.
During the Depression, there's a lot of people in there.
Yeah, yeah. Now, at that time, was the lumber yard across the street?
Yeah, community lumber.
Yeah. All right, does anyone else have anything they'd like to add? All right, well, let's give our panel Yeah, this has been fun. So we still have cookies and punch left, or water, I think. Water, sorry, not punch, water. So you can stay as long as you'd like.